Hello and welcome. I am live from Pelham's Wasteland, and today I have another episode of Pelham's Wasteland Reads for you guys, this time covering Passage at Arms by Glen Cook, which is a part of his Starfishers universe. But I was told that this one is totally readable as a standalone and that you don't need to read the main Starfishers trilogy to understand it. And I would say, having not read the original Starfishers trilogy, that seems reasonable to me because I felt like I understood basically everything I needed to know about this particular book, which I thought was great. I am. I'm not. I wouldn't describe myself really as a Glenn Cook hater by any means, but I do basically having read the first six books in the Black Company and having read a number of Glenn Cook books when I was younger, but specifically as an adult, I've read the first two trilogies put together by Nightshade Books, and in their line of reprints, and then a couple of other things. I read The Sword Bearer, and it was like, and a couple of other things. But this one I thought was really good, as opposed to some of the others, which I thought were all right, but that I kind of liked a lot of the things that they inspired more than them, which is basically my position on the Black Company, is that I kind of like reading like Stephen Erickson's version of, hard bitten soldiers at war in fantasy worlds compared to the Black Company version. Just that's just me. But this one, I really thought it was great. This is sci-fi, not fantasy, and it is military naval sci-fi set on a ship that works kind of similar to like a World War II submarine is the comparison that often gets used. A very small ship that carries a complement of missiles and that is most successful in these kind of quick raids and has this ability to use this kind of strange uh, temporal effect of a particular technological system to do what they call climbing. So they call these ships the climbers. Climbing being a essentially a spatial metaphor for ascending into a different dimension, basically, and leaving behind a very small point, smaller and smaller point based on how far into the climb they are, how high they are, essentially, in that spatial metaphor. And so the smaller the point is, obviously, the harder they are to detect, but the more energy that they have to spend on staying in there, and then the harder it is to come out smoothly and all that. So similar to the concept of a submarine, right, diving into the ocean, but needing to come up at some point. And similar to the concept of the submarine in this case is a lot of the kind of realistic limits, you might say. So, like, one of the big limits is on weight. So, all of the characters are have a all of the people on the ship have a specific weight allowance that is what they're allowed to bring in their personal gear. But there's also lots of limitations on the other stuff that they can take with them. So, right, like how much food they can carry, how much fuel they can carry, how many missiles they can carry, all of that sort of stuff, which defines a lot of what the kind of texture of the book is about, which is the concessions made to the military expectations of command compared to the lives of the individuals on this ship who have to withstand ever greater privations basically as they run out of stuff or don't have backups or don't have like any number of the amenities that would be expected on a larger ship that can carry more stuff. But obviously, or I say not obviously, but basically in this system, how much weight you carry, how much mass you bring with you as you climb puts more tax on the system, and so they, you know, the command really wants more missiles and less people and less extraneous stuff and all of those things that make it harder to live on this ship, in very, very cramped quarters with a whole crew of, in this case, other men. They talk about the idea of, the climber crews are gender segregated and screened for gay people is one of the other details that they put in there. Um, but to hopefully avoid any type of, like close quarters sexual contact, I guess is the assumption in there. And then, of course, when they get home, they totally cut loose and go crazy because they've been completely pent up and, sort of desperately need the outlet of their, um, pent up stress and experiences and all that sort of stuff. Um, the story follows our, essentially war correspondent protagonist, who is a, former officer in the Navy who was, badly injured and left for a while and has now, um, he's sort of cleared for all of the stuff that the Navy needs, but he has been working as a journalist, and so he is essentially being an embedded war correspondent on this, particular run of this particular climber ship out into enemy territory, and it's great. The like I said, the texture of the book is really good. There's a lot of technobabble stuff, so if you are someone who gets, frustrated by technobabble or feels like it's kind of obfuscating, I would say that this is maybe one that you wouldn't enjoy as much. I don't know. I wasn't annoyed by the technobabble at all, and I didn't feel like it was really obfuscating. I felt like it was more like that is kind of the sort of texture of the interactions, for lack of a better term, that really the, kind of aesthetics of this type of story are built around a, very technically oriented interaction between the crew of the ship and the technology involved in running the ship itself. And so having the kind of technobabbly stuff feels like that's what makes sense for these characters to, like, that's how they interact with this particular very small section of the world around them. Um, the title "Passage at Arms" is, not necessarily explained in the book, but it is referenced in the book. The idea, the passage at arms being a, jousting term, the one run down the lists on horseback with, lance couched and, trying to knock the other guy off his horse and all that sort of stuff. And that is also very much what this particular book is about, thematically, the idea of the gap between this valorized image of the war heroes, these climbers, as the heroic frontier of humanity's war effort against these, strange aliens who we see almost nothing of directly in this book. Um, and the kind of image of them that is projected to, humanity at large compared to the reality of this kind of intense, suffering and, um, lack of access to all of the comfortable amenities that one might hope for, and all of the different things that the climber crews have to go through in order to be able to, fight these missions and to win these military victories and all that. And the passage at arms being exemplary of this kind of ideal of martial chivalry that breaks down in the reality of, um, suffering and discomfort and, flawed characters in very, very stressful environments. Anyway, um, yeah, like I said, I really thought this book was really good. A lot of the kind of classic Glen Cook things, in his best writing are here, but I think I like them a lot more in here often. But there's some great elements there. One of the things that gets talked about, early on, is the idea of, the various kind of euphemisms that come into play when talking about, warfare in this particular setting. So, they don't talk about like the enemy, or they don't name their alien species. They call them the other firm. Um, or when they're on planet side and the planet is actively being bombed, and they're moving through the kind of bombed out city to get from one point to another on the planet. And they talk about, the guys upstairs are sending something, and what they're referring to is, bombers dropping out of the upper atmosphere down to attack the human settlements that are accessible on the ground. And there's a lot of, little details like that, the slang that they have come up with, and the way that kind of interacts with the euphemisms, and even like the idea of climbing is like that, right? That they refer to this as climbers and climbing, but it's a fairly kind of technical process that doesn't actually involve like moving through the z-axis in space, right? um, so yeah, I don't want to say too much about what actually happens in the book, other than it's a insane, like, submarine mission that goes on for too long and is really difficult, and is brutal on everybody involved, and causes all of the people to suffer under immense strain and all of that sort of stuff. It's I think all just about everything you would want in this kind of technically oriented military sci-fi. Really, really great stuff, and totally worth checking out if that sounds interesting. Even if, I will say, if you have not found yourself totally enamored with other Glen Cook, like me, as someone who I I liked the first Black Company trilogy, the second collection, the Books of the South collection from Nightshade, I did not like as much. And a lot of the other stuff of his that I've read, at least recently, have been like, eh. I hear that the standalones that he has written are not as good, and a lot of them have been standalones that I've read because I just don't read long series that much. So that's probably part of it. But yeah, if you are of that same feeling, you might end up really liking this, because that's how I felt. Is that I was sort of like, I'll check this out. It's not very long. It's only like 300 pages or something. And the cover that I've got on screen is the new or newer Nightshade reprinting that I think is pretty easy to find nowadays. There's definitely a digital copy, and I think there was a humble bundle or something. That's how I got a bunch of them recently, a bunch of the Glen Cook sci-fi books, with the Nightshade reprintings. But anyway, relatively easy to find, totally worth checking out if you like the idea of kind of serious, gritty military sci-fi, that has some kind of great action sequences, and also all of the great kind of um, soul crushing boredom of a lot of kind of gritty military sci-fi, and military memoirs and all that sort of stuff. That there's definitely a lot of that about just the kind of continual level of pressure that all of these characters are under, and them trying to figure out how to deal with the mental and emotional costs of what they're doing, alongside the basic, like, technical issues of like, okay, line up the targets and shoot missiles at the enemy and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, great fun, totally worth checking out. Like I said, Passage at Arms by Glen Cook. I guess I will read the Starfishers trilogy at some point, I figure, since I liked this one. And I guess I'm going to read the rest of The Black Company at some point also, and maybe I'll talk about it on here. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, this one is quite good. And like I said, this is a strong recommend from your boy at Live from Pelham's Wasteland. So anyway, I think that's going to be all for today. Thanks for watching and or listening. I've been Live from Pelham's Wasteland, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.